Hi folks, this video is going to be coming at you about sources and interviews, how we're going to go out and get information for our articles. So our three learning goals are: number one, we're going to identify the types of news sources and interviews. We're going to generate interview questions. And we're going to structure and conduct an interview. So before we get really into interviewing, I want to make a brief statement that while interviewing is a great way to get information, it's usually not where our information gathering is going to start, right? Before you ever pick someone to go interview, you should do some research yourself. What do you know about the subject? What does the internet have to say about the subject from reliable sources? What do your friends or your peers have to say about the subject? Like, get that information to form a frame of reference in your mind. Once you feel like you've understood the subject a little bit better, then go out and interview someone. It's part of our information gathering process, but it's not the only type. All right, so why do we interview? Number one, we interview people to get our information and our facts right? That's your job as a journalist, is to make sure that we're recording the correct thing of what happened, right? That's on us. We're also going to interview people to get their opinions, because as a kind of a historical record for our community, senior high, we want to represent a wide array of opinions from people throughout the school. That's part of what we do as creating that historical record. And then lastly, which is really important, is we want to capture people's personalities, right? I want to conduct an interview in such a way that I can show how interesting and why this person is interesting if we're doing an article on them in the yearbook or the newspaper. So the different types of sources we're going to have there's four of them. So primary, secondary, professional, and layperson. Primary sources are the original source, right? They're the person who did the thing, right? If we're doing an article on a football game, the primary source would be the football players, the people who played in the game, who caught the touchdown pass, right? That's a primary source. So for an example, an artist who painted an art, whatever artists do, they did the thing. A secondary source would be someone who is related or close to or witnessed the thing, whatever the topic of our subject is. So it might be that artist's teacher or their friend or their parent. Those could all be secondary sources, someone who's close but didn't necessarily do the thing themselves. Professionals are like experts on that thing. This could be a local professional artist, or it could be like a local connoisseur of art who could give us some frame of reference on this piece of art or this artist. And then last, so a layperson is anyone and a layperson is anyone who had an opinion on a thing that happened in our community, right? And that, again, kind of becomes important because I want to get people's reactions to stories around senior high. Okay, so when we're writing interviews, we actually need to generate some questions. And mostly we're going to be focused on open-ended questions. And what I mean by open-ended questions are questions that lead to longer, more developed answers, not a one-word answer. So what was your favorite part about blank? That's going to get someone talking in more than like a yes or no terms. So anything that leads students or your sources to kind of open up about a topic. So usually why questions are pretty good. How questions are also pretty good. How did you first come to play the piano? Why did you approach your basketball game this way? X, Y, or Z, right? Now that's not to mean that closed-ended questions are not important, right? Closed-ended questions are questions that can be answered in short form. So for example, when did you start running cross country? I might say 3 years ago, right? That's a really short answer. That could be really important information that I need to know. So don't count out closed-ended questions. Just know that these aren't necessarily going to lead to really in-depth interviews, right? They're going to be short answers, get the information that you need, and move on to open-ended questions. And a good way to do that is with follow-up questions. These are questions that arise during an interview to keep kind of a source talking, right? I want my sources to talk as much as they possibly can, so I have a lot of information to come back and write my article with. So if someone says something during an interview that you don't understand, you need to ask them a follow-up question. Or if you ask an open-ended question and they give you a one-word answer, you need to follow up about that. You need to push them a little bit politely, like turn this into a conversation, not a quiz. Don't let someone get away with like a one-word answer. So if someone says, what was your favorite part about the football season? You're like, oh, my teammates. Get them talking. Like, what about their teammates made that football season amazing, right? Follow up those questions. You have to be listening and responding. And that leads us to our art of interviewing. So number one, do your research before you interview, and always, always, always record your interview. Don't rely on your own assumption that you're going to remember what your sources said. Grab your phone, download an app called Otter, O-T-T-E-R, and record any interview that you do. So we have it for later use. Number two, write down your objective for the interview. What's your goal? Okay, I'm interviewing this person. What information am I trying to get out of them? What am I trying to learn about this person and from this person? Really focus on those open-ended and reflective questions, like what was your favorite part of, what were the unexpected hurdles, what about the benefits of X, Y, or Z? Those are just some examples. Try to ask one question at a time so they have a chance to think and respond, and that way you can kind of follow up with follow-up questions if you need to. Sequence your questions, like, because you may end up like coming up with a list of questions and they may not make the most chronological sense in that order that you thought them up. So be okay with reordering them. And then, like I said, make this a conversation, not a quiz. You're not looking for a right answer. You were looking for a in-depth answer, right? So you have to be okay with talking to that person, making them feel like they're just having a conversation, that they're not being grilled about their answers. And part of that is using those follow-up questions to get details. And then I'm always going to recommend to take notes during the interview as well as right after the interview. Write down what you thought was important, what was interesting about what that person said. If you interview someone on a Monday and you don't get down to sitting down to writing an article until Wednesday, you're not going to remember that much, right? So take notes. So a couple of other interview questions. Our first question always is, what's your name and your title and how do you spell it? So that would be like, are you the football captain? What position do you play on the volleyball team, right? We want to make sure we're getting those things right, and always ask how you spell names. I don't care if they've been your best friend for 15 years. Ask them how they spell your name, because it shows that you care and you're going to get it right in the article. And then my general rule is I shoot for about 6 to 8 open-ended questions per interview, and then as many closed-ended questions as I need. So I might have 15 questions prepared for an interview, and if 8 of those are open-ended, 7 of them are going to be kind of closed-ended questions, right? Because I want to get that information first, that easy information that's just, yes or no questions or single one-word answers. And lastly, what's the last question that we ask? Is there anything else you'd like to share? Always close your interviews with giving them the opportunity to talk about something that might come up. I'd say 90% of the time, they'll probably say like, nope, I'm good. But 10% of the time, a person might have something that they think is important to say that you didn't think to ask about as an interviewer. And here's your opportunity to let them help write that story for you. Because if they answer this question, is there's anything else you'd like to share? That means that's important to them. And I might focus extremely closely to what they're saying here to see if there's any other information that I need to pick up on what they thought was important about this interview. All right, good luck, folks.